Trails is flight up. Roger.
Alexandra, do you go horseback riding?
Oh, yes, I do. I really enjoy it. How about you?
No, I like it too. But you know, there's one horse that nobody could ever ride, and we'll explain it to you today on the show.
And would you believe that you can win a canoe race with a boat built from concrete?
We'll also present the saga of the Rattan brothers, who followed in the footsteps of the Wright brothers and conquered the skies of modern aviation.
So stay put for a memorable show. It all started with a magazine article titled "The Horse That Never Was." A great admirer of Leonardo da Vinci embarked on a voyage through time to complete a dream of creating a 24-foot bronze horse standing on two legs that was initiated by the genius of the Renaissance. The year was 1977, and the life of a retired commercial pilot by the name of Charles Dent would never be the same. For the next 16 years, he worked incessantly to fulfill the dream that was started over 500 years ago. In 1482, the Duke of Milan, Lodovico Sforza, assigned Leonardo da Vinci to sculpt a horse of clay which was to be cast in bronze. The statue, which was commissioned to pay homage to the Duke's father, was to be 24 feet in height. For almost 17 years, Da Vinci worked on the project, making innumerable sketches in anticipation of creating this giant masterpiece. He managed to complete a full-scale clay model, but before he had a chance to cast it in bronze, the Duke interrupted the assignment. France was about to invade Milan, and the bronze reserved for this work of art wound up being smelted down for cannons. In 1499, the French army occupied the Duke's castle. Abandoned, the model became perfect target practice for French soldiers testing their marksmanship. Fascinated by history, Charles Dent decided to fulfill Leonardo's dream. The project, initially a one-man enterprise, grew in importance and became the work of Leonardo da Vinci's Horse Incorporated, known as LDVHI. Rodney Skidmore, vice president of LDVHI, was one of the first supporters of Dent's idea.
Charlie said, you know, for the cost of one cruise missile, we can give something back to Europe and to the Italians. I'll never forget that. That kind of hooked me, and, you know, in all of the destruction and all of the wars, you know, here was an opportunity to do something good and give something back.
Ironically, Dent, just like Da Vinci, wasn't able to witness the realization of his dream. He died in 1994 after working 16 years on the project.
He asked the board to promise that we would get the project to the foundry and continue on, which is what we've done.
This is really the second attempt to build the modern horse. The first, built by Charles and his team, wasn't quite right. It was, at best, just a rough model.
You know, he was following Leonardo's drawings, or trying to, and based on the information he was getting, he, along with several other people, sculpted an 8-foot horse, which took us, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 years to complete, because it went through so many changes, and we'd get it to a certain point, and Charlie wasn't happy with it. So we would then go back, and it went through this evolution for 12 years.
Charles knew as he was dying that more work would be needed, and he asked his board to find a sculptor with Renaissance studies background to carry on his dream. In 1996, LDVHI contacted sculptress Nina Akamu to carry out Charles Dent's wishes. She worked on the original horse for 4 months, but finally decided that it was better to start from scratch.
One of the good things about working on a project like that was, in a sense, it allowed me to grow into it. So it was really an evolutionary process. Initially, I really didn't have a clue of what I was getting into. I couldn't actually take the burden and the entire responsibility of thinking, I'm going to do a Leonardo da Vinci horse. It's just not something that you walk into.
But Nina accepted the responsibility and proceeded to carefully study and analyze Leonardo's drawings and notes.
He wrote quite often in his notes about those horses. His descriptions sound very much like the Iberian horses. So taking that into consideration, and then looking at hundreds of drawings, literally hundreds of drawings, which showed horses in all different positions, I began to come up with a fairly systematic or stylized view of what a characteristic Da Vinci horse looked like.
Nina explains that she wound up creating a horse from new drawings instead of trying to make a faithful copy of Da Vinci's original horse.
Because his was such an idealized classical sense of beauty, and it was very different. And obviously, if you look at the drawings, it doesn't look like a natural horse.
The final result is a personal interpretation of all the sketches and information gathered over the years.
I mean, it's hard to imagine, in a way, that if there were just a few drawings of Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel, that you would say, oh look, I'm going to paint the Sistine Chapel from these few drawings. In fact, I had to change what the sculpture was about, and it became a tribute rather than a copy of.
Nina was definitely inspired by Leonardo's vision to create what is considered to be a masterpiece.
It's really representative of Leonardo's genius to create a sculpture of that magnitude. The horse is so powerful, and it has this very Leonardesque way of moving, this momentum, which the Smithsonian calls it a charger. Smithsonian Magazine calls it a charger, and that's an apt way of looking at it, although it's not technically correct, but the horse is moving in that way. So I would rather look at it in terms of symbolism, that this kind of energy which is projected is a creative energy that Leonardo had, that the kind of vision that the horse has, which is very intense and looking off into a distance, fully focused on that goal, is about artistic vision, or vision to go for your goal. It's about focus and determination.
So the horse was finally completed, and in accordance with Charles Dent's wishes, was officially donated to the people of Italy. It was unveiled in Milan 500 years after Leonardo da Vinci's horse was destroyed. It was a ceremony full of pomp and national pride, and fortified the bond between two distinguished nations, one full of historical tradition and the other following in the footsteps of a creative dream.
Charlie's dream has finally made it to Milan, and I feel that I'm very proud to have known Charlie and to have been a part of this and seen to it that we gave him something and the world something that we can all be very proud of.
We have kept our promise. The horse is finished.
The work of LDVHI didn't stop.
From the sale of replicas and smaller horses, which will go on beyond the horse and be used to educate children and students, that is our long goal plan, to put an educational foundation in place so this will be an ongoing dream.
Legend says that Leonardo da Vinci died in 1519 with two major disappointments: not having flown nor finishing his famous horse sculpture. But time cures all wounds. Both of his dreams have now been realized. He didn't fly, but he was certainly there in spirit, along with the horse of his dreams.
Canoes made out of concrete. But they don't sink. In fact, with a little help, they're faster than ever. These students from various universities are trying to ascertain how to utilize concrete to build the perfect canoe. The concrete consists of sand, stone, and water, and contrary to public perception, isn't as heavy as it appears. Park Boyer, Vice President of Marketing for Master Builders, Inc., explains.
Most of us think about concrete as just a bulk material. It's just a big block of something. And yet when you build a canoe that's a 1/4 inch thick, a canoe that weighs only 50 pounds out of concrete, you start to realize the versatility or the other things that it can be used for. Our bridges built out of these kinds of materials could weigh a lot less. Highways could last a lot longer if we use the kind of technology these kids are using in making these canoes.
Okay, look good. Paddles up!
250 civil engineering students built these concrete canoes from scratch. They used them to compete in a yearly regatta. The winning team receives $9,000. Nathan Tarbox, student at the Florida Institute of Technology, relates how his team made a canoe as part of a civil engineering project.
Well, we started about January of this year, and first thing we did was make a wood mold. So we made our boat out of wood, and then we poured our concrete over the top of it. And we used concrete, and our reinforcement was carbon fiber, and then we used 2 layers of this carbon fiber in the boat. And then with our finished concrete, we sanded that smooth, and then we put on this beautiful blue finish, Concord metallic blue finish. On the ends are foam blocks to add for flotation so that this canoe can actually float when it's swamped in the water and filled so that it won't ever sink.
The project's objective is to educate the students with the diversity of materials available for construction, plus developing other skills such as repairing a punctured canoe.
This area right here had a hole due to the cradle. We had a 2x4 on a perpendicular edge, and through our bungee system it weakened, and the canoe smashed on the 2x4, created a hole here, cracked clear up to the gunnel, clear across here to the flotation. And how we repaired it is we took a Dremel tool and took a carbide bit and routed into the side of the concrete and used a threaded rod. It's basically like a staple. You would staple over the crack. And on the inside, we just used a rapid repair, concrete repair.
And a Band-Aid.
And a Band-Aid. We painted the Band-Aid for a little bit of humor.
Luther Graff, president of the American Society of Civil Engineers and one of the organizers of the competition, puts the undertaking in perspective.
This is an opportunity for the students to learn communication skills, economic skills, teamwork skills, leadership skills, all those things that are not really part of the classroom. And at the same time, it introduces them to the profession itself. It is the introduction of students to how things actually happen when they become part of the civil engineering profession.
The regatta, in addition to the awards and scholarships and money, is an exciting challenge for these students, both competitively and creatively.
60% of the competition is based on academic performance of the canoe team. They have to make a presentation about how they built their canoe, how they managed that process. And the other 40% is what today is, and it's kind of the fun part, but they'll be racing their canoe.
We've done fairly well. We've won the national in 3 of the past 6 years and placed second in 2 of those other years. And all we can say is we've come out here to give it everything we've got, and we hope the wind will stay down.
Everyone who participates learns and has a good time. And the canoes don't sink unless they're punctured.
Around the world in a plane without stopping to refuel, an amazing feat by the Rutan brothers. Will their record for such an amazing accomplishment ever be matched? Instinct and intellect in search of new challenges. These are the innate characteristics of the Rutan brothers. Bert designs the planes, and Dick flies them. Dick's flight around the world without stopping or refueling took 9 days. The plane, called the Voyager, took off from Mojave in California on December 14, 1986. During the trip, Bert, his nerves on edge, followed the saga from his control room. At the beginning, it didn't look like he was going to make it. Dick and his co-pilot, Gina Yeager, didn't give up. The severest challenge was crossing Africa.
And all the weather people says you can't do it at this time of year, the weather's really bad. And they were right. But we made it through anyway, and I realized we made it through Africa, and I started almost crying. Well, maybe I did cry a little bit. I was absolutely confident that we had no chance of success on the first attempt. And if we were very lucky, we could make it on the third attempt, but never the first. And every day as the sun would come up, we were still flying and still heading west, and it was another day. And I just couldn't believe it. And then all of a sudden that day was over, and then we're to the next day, and the next day, and the next, pretty soon you're halfway around the world, and you're still going day to day to day.
But not without undergoing a frightful experience near the end of his voyage.
We had our biggest, most challenging problem of all, as we found due to a transfer pump failure to be able to transfer fuel right, and it was a mechanical failure in this pump, that we lost both engines, failed. And so the airplane is in a spiral going into the dark Pacific Ocean that morning, and knowing that I'm almost home, we're almost there. I mean, how could we go down here? But pretty soon you looked up at the altimeter and you says, if you don't do something in about the next 20 seconds, you're gonna hit the water. So then you say, okay, get to work, fix this thing, solve the problem, start the engine, get the fuel, and then we did find it, and we pumped it where it was supposed to be, and then finally we were over that emergency, and I called back home and said, guys, we're coming home.
Armed with an adventurous spirit and 6 years older than his brother, Dick's early ambition was to fly. At 16, he enlisted in the Air Force. As a pilot, he was always a loner. In the Vietnam War, he became known as the most courageous pilot of the squadron, but he never lost his modesty or self-effacing nature, as exemplified by his surprising reaction to his achievement.
I called the tower. I says, Edwards Tower, this is Voyager 1. He says, go ahead. And I crossed my fingers and I says, we're about 20 minutes south. And I says, I know you're really busy. Now, I don't want to bother anything, hoping that they would let me in. He says, if you let me in and I'll land out in the remote area of the dry lake and I won't bother anybody, if you just, let me come in and land. And the sergeant called back, confused. He says, Voyager 1, he says, this is Edwards Tower. He says, sir, we have canceled flying today and we're all here waiting for your return. And a few minutes later, we came over the hills to the south and I looked down in the Edwards Air Force Base complex where the sound barrier was broken and the space shuttle first landed. And I saw tens of thousands of people that came out to see our little home-built airplane. And it was really emotional. I just couldn't believe we'd make it on the first attempt and that anybody would even care about it. And it's an emotion I'll never forget.
It's taken a few years for Dick to finally realize the magnitude of his accomplishment.
To do something that nobody had ever done before has been a fascination in my life from day one, and it even permeates my soul right now, is a sense of adventure, and to go where no man has gone before.
At 60 years old, Dick is more irreverent and impulsive than ever. His parents, Irene and George, are free thinkers. They always encourage their sons to be independent.
We have never tried to discourage them in anything that they wanted to do. If it was something that they wouldn't get killed in, we encouraged them to go ahead.
I think the person that helped me as much as anything would be my mother, because she took me to all these air shows when I was a kid, and I look at all those jet fighter pilots and those early jet airplanes, and I would look at them as some kind of god, that something that little Dick Rutan could never ever obtain. And then she would remind me that you can do that. They're no different from you. You can actually do that.
While Dick concentrated on flying, Bert attended to the practical aspects of aviation.
And then one day I came home and Irene said to me, well, Bert said that he wants to build his own airplane right from scratch. And I said, hey, that's nice, let's encourage him. So I said, Irene, now you take him down to the hobby shop and get the easiest kit you can find, the starter kit, the one that's easy to build, to put together so that he'll feel confident that he can do it.
When George came home, he discovered that Bert didn't need the kit to build a plane. He was more interested in the wood, balsa, and rice paper because he knew how to put it together. Bert was only 9 years old at the time.
I was absolutely fascinated with trying to make model airplanes perform better, fly better. And I did a lot of building and flying of model airplanes.
At 16, Bert became a pilot. but instead of enlisting to go to war, he decided to study aeronautical engineering. He gave up flying a few years later after serving as a test pilot.
I was doing a very dangerous thing. And I remember thinking, why am I doing this? There are people who want to do this, and I don't want to.
Today, he's entirely devoted to the engineering and construction of airplanes.
Especially during the Voyager project, I made up my mind that if Bert could design an airplane that could do that job, then Dick could fly it.
The Rattan brothers' passion for aviation had an influence on their parents. George, a dentist on a pension, and Irene, a housewife, are both 84 years old. They've been married for 64 years and were also pilots once.
She has never been afraid of flying. When I first started to fly, she'd go with me, not worry about it. I kept saying, take the wheel. I want to show you. We're up here, you can't hit anything. Now I want to show you how to make a circle. No, I don't want to do it. No, go ahead and do it. I'd make her turn and make a whole circle.
As for Dick, he doesn't give up. His next adventure is an attempt to accomplish a trip around the world in a balloon. He wants to try it on a hybrid model that uses as much hot air as helium to rise. Contrary to his Voyager experience, where he succeeded for the first time, this will be the second balloon attempt for Dick.
Sometimes the first attempt around the world in a balloon, you may have to bail out and try it again. All of those things happen, but never ever give up. The only way to fail is if you give up. And if you think about selecting a real lofty goal of something that you want to accomplish, remember one thing, and that is that the tougher the climb, the better the view.
With his determination, we have faith that he'll succeed. Now that was a great show, from a trip around the world to a Renaissance horse.
I must admit, those Rattan brothers really made me want to learn how to fly. It would be so exciting.
Well, on that note, we have more exciting topics waiting for you in our next show of Scope. Until then,
stay well and happy landings.